Guys, you're watching Trending in the AM on the STT Sports Network. Like, subscribe, share, and joining me now on the I Have No Sponsor hotline, Paul Knepper. Good morning, Paul. How you doing?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for taking some time out to talk. I know you got a brand new book out here that you're here to promote. But real quick, Paul, you used to cover the NBA, the Knicks. You're down there in Texas. You're from New York. You're all over the place. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself for those that don't know.
Yeah, well, as you noted, I grew up in New York, lived there most of my life, moved out to Austin, Texas about 13 years ago now. The number of years ago now, I covered the Knicks for Bleacher Report. I wrote my first book, which came out, I think, 4 years ago, called The Knicks of the 90s, about kind of the team of my youth, the Knicks of my youth. And my new book just came out the other day. It's called Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet.
Yeah. And guys, just so you know, his website is linked in the description of this video. If you want to purchase his book or even look at the description of his book, that is down there in the description. Make sure you check it out. So you're a University of Michigan graduate, I gather too. We've got quite a few Michigan graduates and Michigan fans that are always in the chat. So you're going to be, even though this is a Philly sports channel, you're going to be well received because you wrote a book about the Sixers, but right. You're also a Michigan graduate, so people are going to love you in this chat.
Sweet. Yeah, go blue.
Go blue. We got multiple. So let's talk about this book. You're a New York guy. You covered the Knicks. What drew you to writing a book about Moses Malone? While he played for multiple teams, obviously he's known for his time in Philadelphia, extremely well and everything like that. Why Moses Malone for this book?
Yeah, the biggest thing is he's not known well enough. When people talk about the greats of the game, his name just doesn't come up often enough. And especially younger generations, they have no idea. It's the kind of thing where if you know, if you're over a certain age and you saw Moses play, you know how incredible he was. But younger generations just don't, because he's not talked about enough. And he had such an incredible career. I mean, he was the first modern day guy to go straight from high school to pros, which was very difficult at the time for a number of reasons. And then, the stats, the accolades are incredible. He's one of only 9 guys to win 3 or more NBA MVP awards. Mm-hmm. As you all know, in Philly, he was the best player on one of the greatest teams of all time. He's by far the greatest offensive rebounder of all time. And yet nobody talks about him. So I kind of wanted to bring his story to light for younger generations and those people who watched him and loved him.
I want to get to comparing him to the current state of the NBA in a little bit. But I was reading some of the synopsis on your book, and you talk about his personality a lot, in this book, of who he is and, what he was all about as a person. Who was Moses Malone, the person? Is that maybe why Moses Malone, the person, why people don't know about Moses Malone, the player, as well?
I think that has a lot to do with it. Absolutely. I mean, Moses was, here's the thing about Moses. He had no interest in being famous. None. Mm-hmm. And we've seen there are other guys like that. I mean, Jokic is like that now, I think. Tim Duncan was like that. Kawhi Leonard's like that. There have been other great players like that. But he had no interest in being famous, and he didn't play the whole game with the media. He was very gruff with the media. Back when Moses played, there was no internet. There was no social media. Even cable television hadn't even exploded yet for a lot of his career. So the mythology around our athletes was created by sports writers. Mm-hmm. The sports writers never got to know him. And a lot of them flat out disliked him because he was very standoffish. So nobody really got to see the real side of Moses. And some of the things I learned is, one, he was a very intelligent man, which was contrary to the way he was projected. He had a great sense of humor. He was a guy who always did like little, pranks in the locker room, just stuff like, hiding your shoes and then starting to giggle while you were walking around the locker room looking for them, that kind of stuff. I think one of the things I really admired about Moses and his teammates admired about him was that he was incredibly humble. Here's a guy who won 3 MVP awards. He was a superstar. He was an all-time great. And as one of his high school friends said to me, when Moses became big, everybody around him began to look at him differently. But he never changed the way he viewed himself. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really cool about him. And so, teammates really respected him because, Moses treated that 12th man at the end of the bench the same way he treated Dr. J. He treated the janitor in the arena the same way he treated Dr. J. And so he was a loved and respected teammate, a friend, and had a great sense of humor. And it's a shame that nobody really got to see that. But as you noted, a lot of that is his fault.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see that in the athlete today. Like I was just when I was doing research on Moses for this interview and your book, but also his career, I wrote down like 3 words: his character, his lack of ego, and his work ethic. Well, not 3 words, that's 5 words, but 3 phrases there. You don't see that in the athletes today. I mean, there's a few select ones, but I think it was a lot more common back then without the internet and everything else, where these guys, they put their heart and soul into their teams and their profession versus their egos.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it, money corrupts everything, right? I mean, let's be honest. And Moses was the first guy to make $2 million a year, which was a big deal at the time when he signed with the Sixers. But even then, but you had all-stars who were making less than $1 million a year. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's inconceivable now, right? I mean, you guys are making $50-60 million a year, so it's a whole other stratosphere. And they're just and beyond that, and not just the player salaries, but this like the sneaker money too, and the endorsement deals in general. So I think it's probably harder to remain humble now. But yeah, there was a collective, back then there was a collective idea of the league was on shaky ground financially, and there was a collective feeling even among the stars that we need to promote the league. Dr. J was very much like that. Magic was very much like that. They talked about it openly. We need to promote the league. We need to build up the league. We need to we're all kind of in this together. And nobody talked about brand. Mm-hmm. You know that when you were young, we never heard that word, my brand. Nobody's talking about their brand. Your brand was the team, right? That was what can I do for the team, not what can I do for my brand. And so, yes, I mean, I think Moses was probably on the extreme end of that, even when he played. But as you noted, that there's been such a shift in that in general in the past 30 years.
Yeah, this comment here from Noom saying Barkley had zero clue what hard work looked like until he met Moses Malone. Like, just talk about, Moses Malone also, he hung around. He played a lot longer in the NBA than I realized till I was doing my research. He hung around and did try to help groom the next generation and help groom the younger players as well, right?
Yeah, he was a mentor to countless people. I mean, the most notable are Barkley and Akeem Olajuwon. He had a huge impact on their career. And, Charles loves to talk, so he said it many times that Moses Malone is the single person who had most responsible for his success in the NBA. Mm-hmm. That's a big statement. Obviously, Charles Barkley's an all-time great. But he did. And I think the fact that Moses stuck around so long and so far past his prime, not many superstars do that, stick around and become guys playing 10 minutes a game. But I think it showed how much he loved the game. And I think he was just one of those guys that he just loved being in the locker room. He loved being around the guys. And I think that's why he stuck around so long.
And when I was reading up on the book, it said you interviewed a lot of people to get all different stories on Moses Malone and as much information. 2 parts here. Who were some of the most important people you interviewed for this book, but also maybe something you learned through this process that even you didn't know about Moses Malone when you're talking to some of these people that knew him?
Yeah, I mean, some of the most important people were some of his best friends from childhood, because that stuff was, hard to come by. There's not as much written about that as, say, his NBA years. Another guy I'll say is Olajuwon, because Olajuwon, because he did have a profound effect on Olajuwon's career. And of course, we know how great Olajuwon was. So to hear him talk about Moses and what the things that Moses did for him in detail was really fascinating and a great insight into Moses' character. As far as something I didn't know about him, it goes to the personality stuff, because that was just, nobody knew that. No fans knew that. So I would say his sense of humor and his intelligence. Dr. J said he had a brilliant basketball mind. And so many guys told me how he processed information at an elite level. And he was that kind of guy who you'd be on the court during a game and he knew every player on his team, what their responsibility was at every moment, and sometimes would call them out to it. And in a sense, it shouldn't be surprising. You don't win 3 MVP awards without having a very high basketball IQ. I don't care how talented you are. But I think that intelligence extended off the court as well.
It's just such a funny joke here, but Moses split the sea to lead us to the promised land, obviously talking about the Sixers title in 1983. I mean, just think about the impact that Moses Malone had on our city. I mean, no matter whether you're talking about the Phillies, the Sixers, the Flyers, the Eagles, obviously we're known as a football city, but when our other teams are even remotely good, this city, like, they shower the support on our sports teams. And this team had been close with Dr. J and Maurice Cheeks and some other players there for a while. Moses Malone was so talented. When you talk about the all-time greats, people talk about Dr. J, not Moses Malone. But it was Moses Malone that put this organization over the top to win that championship.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, they had a great team before. They went to the finals in 1982, and then a few months later, they added Moses. And Moses, you went to the finals, and then you add the reigning MVP of the league. He certainly put them over the top. But I think that goes back to what we were talking about, too, is, people talking about him. I think another reason people don't talk about him as much is because he moved around so much.
He did.
So, like, he's loved in Philly. He's loved in Philly. He's most identified with Philly, but he was only there 4 years.
Yep.
So I don't think he's loved the way that I mean, you're the Philly guy, you can tell me, but I don't think he's loved the way that Dr. J is or Allen Iverson are, because those guys spent a decade in Philly. Mm-hmm. And there's only so much, in 4 years, there's only so much love you could build up. I think everyone there respects him and appreciates him, but not to that same level because he just wasn't there long enough.
I think it really it's different players, different personalities, different sports, but he's loved because he helped bring us the title. Kind of similar to Pete Rose when he came to the Phillies. He was like that last missing piece to put us, over the top. Same era too. I mean, totally different personalities and people and whatnot.
Well,
but yeah.
Well, but you know what? A number of people compared him to Pete Rose to me. Pat Williams did. Pat Williams told me he was the Pete Rose of basketball. And that comparison actually kept coming up because they were both widely regarded as the hardest working guys in their individual sports. But yes, many differences as well.
Yeah, many differences as well. But that's crazy. I just came out, anyway. You talk about Moses Malone and how dominant he was and how special he was, but you also look at today's game and the position has evolved so much, the center position. And earlier in today's show, we've been spending a lot of time talking about last night's Sixers game and Joel Embiid. But just talk about the evolution of that position, because you also wrote a book on the Knicks of the 90s, obviously led by, the great Patrick Ewing, who also never got over the top of that team. They never won a championship. But Patrick Ewing is much more like the traditional center that, we all grew up with versus the modern day center. Talk about the evolution of the position. Do you miss the old style of how centers used to play?
I do. I wish there were room for both of the styles. I think inevitably all of us we kind of fall in love with the way the game was played when we were young. I think a lot of us long for that, and it's always going to change. Yep. We're always going to look back. There's pluses and minuses to the changes. I mean, one nice thing is today's centers showcase a lot more skills. Moses was a great post player. He couldn't shoot like a Jokic or a Karl Anthony Towns. He couldn't put the ball on the floor like a lot of the big men do now. He wasn't a very good passer. So in a way, it's nice. But yes, I do miss that. I do miss seeing the old school back to the basket centers and the different moves they had. I talk about Olajuwon. I mean, to watch him in the post was like watching, I don't know, Barishnikov do ballet or something. It was like he was a genius down there. So I do miss the post play, but again, there's some good and bad to the changes.
Do you think this day and age could support a center like there are traditional centers in the NBA, but not dominant traditional centers in the NBA? Do you think this NBA era could support a player like Moses Malone's skill set in the success aspect of it?
Yeah, I don't know that he could be as successful just because the players around him aren't accustomed to playing that way, and that would make it difficult. But it seems like you should be able to, or like a Shaq. I mean, you have to think Shaq could still be able to dominate now. I mean, the great thing about it, the old centers, and you talk about Patrick, and I grew up watching Patrick. The thing about Patrick was he'd go on the block, and teams constantly had to double team him, and he'd kick it out to the open shooters. Mm-hmm. Well, now there's even more spacing for that to happen, and more shooters on the floor. And so it certainly seems like it should still be able to work. It's a little difficult. The league is so pick and roll heavy now, and it's hard to run a pick and roll when you got a big man planted in the middle. You refer to the traditional centers. A lot of the traditional centers now are they're kind of rim running big men. They set the pick and then they run to the basket. It's not as much throw it inside and let them operate.
Moses Malone would average 20 rebounds a game right now. He could dominate the rebound. I mean, he dominated back then. I didn't even know he had the record for most offensive rebounds per game until I double checked it. Like, I knew he was one of the best. But you lack that effort on the boards nowadays in the traditional center, the just basketball in general. I'm watching last night's Sixers game, and just the moments they give up extra offensive rebounds, or when they're not hustling for them, you just don't see that today, that extra hustle and effort anymore like you did back in the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's the same level of effort, of hustle, of guys that play hurt like they did back in the day. We all know about load management. The other thing too, though, I think the nature of the offensive rebound has changed in that three-point shots tend to have longer rebounds, and so it's not you don't have as much of a back in the day it was let's try and get the ball as close to the basket as possible and shoot it from there, and you'd have kind of a scrum of guys in the paint. You don't have that anymore. So just the nature, you're not fighting through a scrum for the offensive rebounds, and a lot of them are longer rebounds because of the longer shots. So it's a somewhat different approach to it.
So, let's bring this for the Sixers fans, since we are a Philly thing. Obviously, Joel Embiid is obviously one of the most, I don't want to use the word controversial. He's a very interesting character. Obviously, one of the most talented centers of this current generation, but obviously hampered by injuries, load management, his complete different personality to Moses Malone, obviously. He's way over the top with the trolling and everything else. But he's at a point in his career where he's not the dominant MVP force he was. And we were watching last night's game against the Bulls, and he started to show a little bit of getting into the game flow. But then you just see he's just not there. And how can Joel Embiid maximize what he has left in the tank? How can you get a veteran of him? He's 30, 31 years old to change what he's done for so long into a different style, because he needs to be a traditional center now versus who he used to be.
Yeah, I hate to say this because I'm going to get nasty comments in the tweets, but Joel Embiid's done.
Yeah,
he's done. I mean, that knee is just not going to hold up for extensive periods of time, and I mean, I hear you. Like, yes, in the limited time he has, he should, I guess, be more conservative with his movements, and it'd be great if he could operate in the post. And he could do that. He has the skills to do that. It's a matter of will and game planning. But I'm just skeptical the guy can stay on the court.
I mean, you wrote a book about the Knicks as well. So Moses Malone's got the MVPs, he's got the titles and stuff like that. You wrote a book about the Knicks, which obviously includes Patrick Ewing, who also, like Joel Embiid, never won a title. But Patrick Ewing is now looked back upon in a pretty positive light, right? One of the best centers of all time, etc. We don't talk about he never got over the hump anymore. How do you think Joel Embiid 10 years from now, 15 years from now, from when the next authors are coming up writing books, when they write a book about Joel Embiid and the quote-unquote process, how will Joel Embiid's legacy be remembered, do you think?
I think he'll be remembered a lot more fondly than he's viewed right now. Patrick certainly is. There was a lot of frustration with Patrick at the time that he couldn't get them over the top, that, a lot of focus on his flaws and not enough, focus on his greatness. And I think years from now, people look back at Embiid and say, wow, he was just incredible physical talent, incredible ability. And I think it'll be, instead of animosity, I think it'll be more of a what if. What if Joel could have stayed healthy? What if they had the right pieces around him at the right time? What if Kawhi Leonard's shot didn't drop that year? What if they re-signed Jimmy Butler? I think there'll be a lot of what ifs, and I think in time his image will actually improve.
We always say what ifs. I do at least once or twice a year. I do a what if show on here. And I know you've been working with Uriah over NBA now and then, and I think he's got some what ifs coming up this season on his show. So here's a what if for you. What if Moses Malone was playing today? How would he succeed? But also, what if Joel Embiid was playing in the Moses Malone era? How would their careers, could Joel Embiid survive back then? In that tougher style? No load management back then.
Yeah. I mean, Joel, it's the same question. Would he have held up? I mean, his body hasn't held up in this in this era. So I don't know if it would have held. I don't know that the physicality would have necessarily made it any worse, but it would have been difficult for him to hold up just based on what we've seen now. As for Moses, it depends. If you took 1982, 1983 prime Moses and brought him to this era, transported him, I think he would have some struggles. I think he would do great on the boards, but I think he wouldn't have the skill set to thrive as a big man in this league because they wouldn't just dump the ball down into him. Now, if Moses came up now, I think he would be great in this league because he was very talented, he was very athletic, and he was very hardworking. And so if he came up now, I think he'd develop a three-point shot. I think he'd develop better ball handling skills because those are the skills you need to be great, and those are the skills you need to get paid. And he would have made sure that he was good at that and would have been able to.
You're saying that Joel Embiid's done. I'm getting a comment here on that. Joel still scored the last two games he played 20 more minutes. He still scored over 20 points. Kind of countering that he's not done. He's still got something left in the tank. You can still manage Embiid, I guess is my answer to that comment, to being a useful player, right? You just got to manage it, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if Joel Embiid scored 50 points tomorrow night. I don't know when they play next, but yeah, he's incredible talent, and when healthy and when right, can still do incredible things. I don't think even in a limited role, I don't think his body can hold up. I don't think he could play. I don't think he could. When I say he's done, I don't mean that he can't play on an NBA floor anymore. I mean he's done as a superstar. I think he's done as a guy that you can rely on. If the Sixers make the playoffs, as looking great right now, you can't expect even a limited role Joel to make it through 2, 3, 4 playoff series. Like I just don't think that's feasible anymore. Unfortunately, I mean, and by the way, I would love to be wrong about this. Love to. You don't want a guy to be hurt. I like watching Joel play. But I hope I'm wrong. That's my.
Yeah, I mean, look. I mean, you're not a Philly guy, but Joel Embiid does make when he's playing at his best. He's an entertaining athlete. I mean, he definitely people gravitate where you talk about Moses Malone being a quiet, shy, introverted person. Joel Embiid's the complete total opposite of that. So people too gravitate towards him in a good and bad way. So as you're trying to grow the sport, it's also good for the sport when Joel Embiid is playing at his peak level.
Absolutely. Everyone, and I don't, like when Jason Tatum tore his ACL last year, like I agree. Man, it's hard. You don't want anybody to get hurt, period. Absolutely. But especially the star players. It's just not good for the league, and they're fun to watch. Even forget personality aside. I mean, Joel Embiid's skill set is just remarkable. I mean, he's one of those guys that a little like Olajuwon was as a big man that you would just watch sometimes, and he was breathtaking. And so I miss that. I'd love for him to get back to that. But
you mentioned Olajuwon's name multiple times, and early in Embiid's career, there were always a lot of comparisons to Olajuwon on the offensive dominance side of the game.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, there are some similarities. I don't think he's quite as fluid, quite as agile as Olajuwon, if just because he's bigger. I mean, Olajuwon is really like 6'10", and Joel's over 6 feet, and he's probably got 30, 40 pounds on Olajuwon in his prime. So I don't think he moves quite the same way, but yeah, talent-wise, I think it's a fair comparison.
So real quick, guys, we're talking to Paul Knepper here, author of a great new book, Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet. It is linked down in the description of this video. Make sure you guys check it out. Obviously, the NBA is in a very interesting spot right now. Obviously, it's evolving with load management and everything that's going on, but there's also fears of work stoppages and stuff like that in the coming years. What's your take generally of the current state of the NBA as a guy that's been covering it for a very long time? Yeah,
it's like I said, I view pluses and minuses to the way the game has changed. There are some things that happen that just kind of make me cringe. Some of the guys taking 6 steps before they shoot the ball. And
are you talking about Giannis?
Yes.
That video from the other day was one of the
crazy, right? I was watching that live. I was like, damn. Because
I bookmarked on Twitter that video just so I can go watch it every so often just for a good laugh. So
yeah, so it's and I think we've gone a little too far with the 3-point shot. But I don't know. It's hard. It's the money, like I keep coming back to the money. It's hard. It's so high that these guys if you can make $60 million and not play hard or sit out every few games or like, then I don't know. It's a tough, even like the All-Star game, like it's bad for the product when guys are not playing or not gutting it out, or even just in an All-Star game when you see guys not playing their hardest. I think that's really bad for the product. So I'm concerned about that, but I don't really know what the answer to that is.
Did the Sixers ruin basketball? Because honestly, the load management really started with the process, and the process has been copied by many of teams since it. They just never monetized it and coined a phrase around it like the Sixers did. Did the Sixers process kind of ruin and cause a big shift in the NBA?
Maybe.
Be honest. You can say.
I don't know.
For saying it.
I mean, you can't blame them for doing it. They chose a strategy within the rules, and they implemented the best they could. I don't think it was a bad strategy, really. Tanking is an ongoing problem. Ideally, in a perfect world, I would love to see relegation like they have in soccer. Like if you finish at the bottom of the standings, you drop out of the top league. Now we don't have enough leagues and we don't have enough teams to do that. But I just in general, I hate the idea of rewarding losing. I'm right that right now. I'm a Jets fan, which is brutal, by the way. But it's a terrible position to be in as a fan, to be like, oh man, I hope they lose the rest of their games. Like that's not fun for a fan. That's not good for attendance. That's not good for anything, So it's not just a basketball problem, clearly, but I wish there was a way somehow to, and I think the play-in tournament's been helpful for that, actually, somewhat. But I don't know. The process is. It's hard to blame. I don't blame them, but yeah, that might have been the start of it.
It seems like the Jets might be starting a process. We did talk about the Jets early in this show. I love all this. I love that they're collecting all those draft picks. I feel bad for Aaron Glenn, taking over that job and being stripped away. But then I worry. I'm like, well, they got 5 first-round picks the next 2 years. The Jets are going to screw them up somehow, right?
Of course, absolutely. You have nothing to worry about. Yes,
absolutely. Well, guys, so. Obviously, you've got the Moses Malone book that's out. It just came out on November 1st. You had your Knicks book before that. What's next for Paul? Do you have ideas for other books that you're going to be, writing? Do you have other, areas you want to do research on right now?
That's a good question. I'm trying to come up with the next book. I'm trying to come up with a good idea.
I got one.
Let me have it. Talk to me, Phil.
I want a book written about the process, but a very specific aspect of it. Because in Philly, there's a lot of people that believe that the league forced the Sixers to fire Sam Hinkie before he could see the process that he laid out through. What would the process have looked like if Sam Hinkie was never fired? Would he have, the moves that Colangelo made after he was, stripped of that job, Sam Hinkie, kind of ruined the process.
They short-circuited it. Yeah.
I always wanted, even if it's just a short circuit, I want to know what the process would have been like if Sam Hinkie stuck around. Sam Hinkie's a hard interview to get. Sam Hinkie has hidden himself from the NBA. He's only made 1 or 2 appearances and comments since leaving the Sixers. I would love to know what the Sam Hinkie process would have resulted in.
That's very interesting.
He wasn't.
Do you think the league forced him out?
I really do believe I think they forced him out because they didn't like the fact that the Sixers were monetizing tanking. They were printing shirts with the process and tanking on it. Once the Sixers coined a phrase and started promoting, hey, we're going to do tickets for $2 because we know we're going to lose tonight, but don't worry, in 5 years we have a plan. I think that is when the league got upset.
That's interesting. That makes sense because it was very, when you talk about them starting it, before them, it was always hush hush. You always deny it. You provide some euphemism for what was actually going on, and we're trying to get the young guys some time and blah blah blah, whatever. But you're right. There was a shift with that. That's interesting. I don't know. I know Yaron Weitzman wrote a book about the process Sixers. I don't recall him getting. I don't think he got into what would have happened had they not got rid of Hinkie.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, anything else you want to promote? Anything else you want to talk about here before I let you go here? Obviously, I got your website linked for everybody. Make sure you guys check out the book if you're interested in a Moses Malone story. I know I'm looking at getting it placed in here soon. Anything else you got going on?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you having me on to promote the book, and I hope Joel stays healthy. I'll end it with that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it, and thank you very much, Paul, for coming on today. And best of luck with the book. I know you're doing a lot of appearances promoting it. Keep up the good work, man. I'll look forward to seeing what the next book is.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
That was Paul Knepper there on the I Have No Sponsor hotline. Guys, if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, share. Check out the book, like I said, in the link of the description of this video. Fantastic interview. Great insight. Great talk on Moses Malone, but the NBA in general. I thought that was a very interesting interview.